What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be my first impressions and my review of episode 1 of the House of Dragon. I'm going to start off by saying that I personally was so excited to go back into Westeros, to be in Game of Thrones again. I absolutely loved the first series that we got, all of it. Yes, season 8 was a massive letdown. It was so disappointing. It wasn't, see, the thing is, it's not actually like a terrible season. It's just because of how good it was before that, and all the storylines and everything that led up to that series 8, everything that happened, all these characters that we come to love, and all these endings that we all expected to have. And season 8 felt like the showrunners just went, right, fucking let's just get it over and done with. It just felt completely rushed. All the endings didn't really make sense. The deaths, the way that people's like story came to an end, it just felt all rushed. None of it felt right, and it was a massive disappointment. I have watched Game of Thrones again a second time round, and it was even better the second time watching it because I understood the Game of Thrones. I understood the politics and the houses and what was going on. And when I first watched Game of Thrones, it was like all a little bit too much. I'd never seen anything like that before. All these different characters and different houses and politics, and I was like, I didn't really get into it until like the end of season 1, when we know, you know, what happens to Ned Stark. That really sucked me in. But up to that point, I was a little bit like, I mean, this is cool, but I'm really confused. Anyway, watching it a second time round, I just fully understood it, and it was just even more enjoyable. And so I would definitely recommend people to do that. But yeah, season 8 still, it's just not a good ending to any of it. Saying that, I was really looking forward to being back in Westeros and to seeing all these new stories unfold. I was so happy to know that this is actually taking place within the books. It's not like HBO just gone, right, we've made loads of money, let's just do a spin-off, like they're doing with the Jon Snow spin-off. They're doing a Jon Snow spin-off series, which I am looking forward to, but I think that is just a HBO written spin-off series. Anyway, the showrunners and the directors of this series have got so much knowledge and information of the books. They're huge fans of the books. They've read the books. They're massive fans of the book, so I feel like this show is in good hands, which gets me really excited. And then I seen some backstage footage of the making of it before it got released, and I was like, okay, this looks exactly like Game of Thrones. I was worried that it might not be, but it really did, and this got me really excited. So going into this, I was hyped already. After watching episode 1, I'm sold. I'm fully back in Game of Thrones. I feel like we're fully there again. It feels exactly the same. There's no difference. It feels just as good as it was when it was good. It feels exactly like that. The sets, the set pieces, the characters, the writing, the acting, just the story, everything that I've seen in this first episode has sold me on it big time. I'm fully invested. This was a brilliant episode. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing. And yeah, I didn't have any issues with it, and I was really kind of worried that I might. What was good about this episode? Well, for me, first of all, the characters is the most important thing in Game of Thrones. The characters and the writing, and obviously the story of what's going on within the Game of Thrones. The characters, for me, are brilliant so far. I absolutely love it. Daemon Targaryen was a standout character for me in this. I can't wait to see more of him. He is ruthless. He's brutal. He's like trickery. He's just a guy that, he's a character that you just know is going to be written so well that some really unexpected stuff's going to happen around him. And he did make me on the edge of my seat, and I was like, I don't really know what to expect from this character, and I love that. And that's what I'm wanting from Game of Thrones. I felt in this episode that I had that feeling that you get in Game of Thrones where you just don't know what's going to happen at any minute. It's so unpredictable, and you've got characters like him that you're like, he's going to like murder everyone in any minute. but is he? I don't know. And I love that feeling. So Daemon Targaryen was brilliant. King Viserys was a really good character. I really like him. The stuff he has to go through in this episode, you know, I feel like he's a good guy. Like, he's actually a good guy. I mean, Targaryens don't seem to be good people, but he seems to be one of the nicest versions of a Targaryen, and I really liked his character, and I felt sorry for him for some of the stuff he had to, the decisions and the way that his life pans out in this episode. So he's got a really interesting role in this series so far, and it's only just episode 1. So much happened. So much happened in this episode that I just feel like it's opened itself up now to so many interesting storylines to take place. And yeah, I really did like King Viserys. Rhys Ifans' character, who is Otto Hightower. I am looking on IMDb, by the way. I don't remember that name. He was a really, really cool character. I really liked him. He is trying to look after King Viserys' best interests. He's trying to like make sure that the king is ruling correctly and he's making all the right choices, but whilst doing that, he's also looking for his own benefits and looking out for himself, and he's trying to wingle his way in there and play the Game of Thrones, and I love it. Millie Alcock, who plays Rhaenyra Targaryen, I think I said that right. Anyway, I'll get there in the end. She's a very interesting character, and she's got a really, really interesting story to be told. This episode leaves off on a very interesting point, which we see in the trailers, so it's not really a spoiler, but I won't say it here in case you haven't watched it. But she's going to have a huge role to play. She probably is the main character going ahead, and I can't wait to see more. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. You know there's going to be some shit going down. You know a lot of people are going to die. It's just Game of Thrones. There's a very interesting dynamic going on that I can imagine is going to cause some shit going down the road. There's a woman who is called Princess Rhaenys Targaryen. I think I've said that right. Rhaenys Targaryen. She's like the princess, the queen that never was, they call her. And it's such a brutal name to be calling her in this episode. You'll know what I mean when you watch it. Every time someone calls her, I'm like, oh god, that's horrible. But basically, she was supposed to be a queen. It tells you this at the beginning, at the very start. It's not even a thing to spoil, but she was supposed to be a queen and she wasn't. And King Viserys got given the throne. So she has an interesting dynamic, because I feel like because of that whole thing, because she was supposed to be queen at one point and she never got it, that's going to create some friction going down the line based on the thing that's just happened at the end of the episode as well. So that's just my predictions. I feel like she's going to cause some shit. Her and her husband, who is called Corlys Velaryon. There wasn't much of his character yet, but I'm interested in him. He is the husband to the queen that never was, and he is on the king's council. So yeah, I feel like there's going to be some shit caused between them. Every single person that's been involved and introduced in this episode, I feel like it's going to cause shit at some point, and that's why I love it, because it just keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's just tension, it's suspense, and it's unpredictable, and that's just exactly what I wanted. Yeah, and this episode really delivers on that. Also, this episode, we get to see dragons straight away. And I knew that was going to happen because I know the Targaryens all have dragons. I think at some point there's going to be 14 dragons that are actually in this house. Right now, I think there's only 10, but we only see 2 at the beginning. It's not throwing all the dragons in your face at once, which I'm glad about, but we do get to see 2 of the dragons. The CGI looks incredible. Again, it looks really, really good. And also, this episode feels a lot more epic than the original series, like first episode, because we've got dragons straight away. So yeah, it just felt really, really good. But I feel like there was a great balance between the having dragons and then it not being too big of a scale, but like keeping it close and intimate and personal with the family drama and obviously the Game of Thrones and the politics. It balanced everything out really, really well. I thought it was shot amazing. The music was really, really good. The directing was really, really good as well. I just feel like it was nailed. Everything was nailed. It looks exactly like Game of Thrones. It looks like they're using exactly the same cameras, the same grading. It feels literally like no difference. It just feels like another episode of Game of Thrones. It didn't feel any different apart from new characters, new story, and back in Westeros, which is great. There's some really brutal things that happen in this episode. Daemon Targaryen, like I said, is a proper dickhead. At the minute, he's just going out and he's just causing shit. He's trying to put fear into the public of the King's Watch, which was a really brutal scene. There's a really graphic, difficult scene to watch. I found it quite difficult to watch. There's a scene of a birth taking place. That's all I'll say, but you'll know what I mean if you've seen it. That was like, whoa. I felt so like, oh my god, this is so bad. Yeah, there was a really, really cool scene where they're jousting and they're doing like some sort of celebration because of this birth. And these knights are just going at each other, and Daemon Targaryen is just ruthless in it. There's some really, really cool action scenes there. And yeah, it just did so many different things in this episode. I thought it was an amazing episode. I loved it. For me, it was a perfect way to start the series off. I can't wait for next week. I can't wait for the next 8 years. I'm buzzing that we're back in Westeros. And yeah, I loved it. So for me, if I was to give this episode a rating, well, I've thought about this and I'm torn a little bit because really, for me, it's a perfect episode. It did everything right that I would have wanted. For a new Game of Thrones series to suddenly start up again, and for the first episode to be this good, and to get all the things that it needed to get right, I thought it was amazing. So for me, there's nothing to sort of give it less points for because it did everything right. I love the characters, which was so important. I love the characters. I love the story, which is so important. I love the whole Game of Thrones aspect, the politics. It got all of this right, which is the most important thing. It did it all right for me. It set every character up for a very interesting story to be told. So much stuff happened in this episode, but yet they managed to keep it all intact and focused on the actual points. They had some really, really cool action scenes. They got dragons. There's so much stuff happened. They got some really brutal, difficult scenes to watch. A lot of, like, gory stuff happened as well. Like, it made me feel like I'm fully back in Game of Thrones. I love the music. The music was great. We've got the Game of Thrones theme getting played throughout the new music that's been made. We've got really cool scenes. We've got amazing cinematography. There was the grading, the look of it all feels great. Everything feels solid. The writing was solid. So I can't really give it less points for anything. So for me, really, it is a 10 out of 10 this episode. It just is. But then, going down the road with this series, there's going to be those episodes that proper stand out, like the original Game of Thrones series, where then one or two episodes of series, you just like, whoa, what the hell just happened then? Like, it'll completely blow your mind. So they're going to be 10s out of 10s. So it's like, if I give this a 10 out of 10, where'd you go from there? Like, you can't get better than that. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. But really, I want you to know that I think it's a 10 out of 10. So there you go, you got 2 ratings from me. You can choose whichever one you like. But that's my review, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the like button. That'd be amazing for me. Let me know down in the comments, what did you think to this episode? Did you enjoy it as much as I did? Did you not? Don't spoil anything, because it's a non-spoiler review. But yeah, please let me know what you think to the new Game of Thrones down below. I'd love to know. And also, if you are new here and you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button if you want to stay updated with my content. And thank you so much for watching, guys. And I'll see you next time on wAFFwORLD.